It can't stop the day we dissect the news, flipping on the edge, choices to choose. Politics and laughter, a blend that's so real. Shooting for the stories that make you feel. With guests from every angle, let's bridge the divide. Finding the truth in the humor we can't hide.
So your journey into film, the journey into film, that's very interesting.
Yeah. And the work you did, the work you did with advertising for different companies and
lead us down that path.
Yeah.
How does one go about today, or do you go about getting a career like that now? Or is it, do you fall into it? Do you intern? Do you create your own channel? How does one get into this kind of line of work?
Like just this line of work in general, like in the U.S., or like how do you go and do it in another country? Or
it's different. So it is different. Like in other places, maybe like.
Or why doesn't he just tell us what he did first? What were you involved in as far as the campaigns you worked in? Because that just sounds fascinating.
I mean, I did a lot of different. It wasn't just advertising. I worked on 3 feature films.
Mm-hmm.
Which ones are they? We got to check them out.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
Godzilla. No.
Wrong country, but yes. I would actually love to see a Chinese version of Godzilla. I think that'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What was the... I'm trying to think first one, I don't even know the English titles, but Mi An is a director who had actually, the thing that made him famous was he had done a TV series that was a remake of a Japanese TV series. It was quite common in China. Some of the really popular Japanese ones, TV series are popular in China. They know all of East Asia, Korea, Japan, China. They tend to know all, in Taiwan, they tend to know all the big stars from each of those industries, film industries, TV shows, all that. So he had made his name redoing this really popular Japanese TV show, the Chinese version. And this was like his, I don't know, 3rd or 4th feature film.
Okay.
But there was the main star was Karen Mok. So she's a Hong Kong star. She's actually very interesting, like ethnic background. She's half, but like her parents are both half Chinese. And then, so her parents, anyway, so she still, I would say, a lot of people may not know she's half, like she still looks quite Chinese, I think. But anyway, she was the big star. Second film I worked on, I don't know if y'all know Maggie Q. She's half Vietnamese, but she's from Hawaii. She grew up on the North Shore of Oahu, which is really cool because I was the only other foreigner on the project. So she was like, native English speaker, like someone. So that was really neat working with her. And then a famous Japanese actor actually was on it as well. So it was a really kind of diverse cast. And that was, shout out Xinjiang, that's her, yes.
Nice.
She was, I think her biggest show in the U.S. was Nikita. They did that remake.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a really phenomenal actor and like.
Yeah. Okay. We'll put a link. On the bottom there.
So that was called, I think the English title on that one I do know, The Warrior and the Wolf.
Okay.
And for that one I made the behind the scenes documentary. So that's on my Vimeo page. I can give you a link to that. But it's,
awesome.
It's like 45-minute, hour-long documentary and I honestly, that was in total between shooting behind the scenes, because that film we filmed 4 or 5 months out in Xinjiang, which is where I'm taking students to China this summer and where my wife's from actually. That's the Wild West of China. So we were out in the boonies and it was amazing, really beautiful place. But 4 or 5 months on that, and then another 7-8 months at least editing it all. It was just, I had an immense amount of footage and I never shot a documentary of that length, any film. And third one I was also shooting the behind the scenes documentary. And usually you have a team of like 3 to 5 people doing that. I was doing it all by myself and shooting production stills. So I was shooting video and photos, and it was insane. And like the hours are crazy there. That last one I worked on, have you ever heard of or seen Farewell My Concubine? One of the biggest Chinese, 5th generation Chinese films from the, what was that, late 80s?
I thought it was 90s maybe, but yeah.
Early 90s. But anyway, the director of photography on that, he was one of China's biggest directors 92. Of photography. He went and started directing films. So he directed that film. It was about AIDS in China. So they had official buy-in from government agencies to talk about AIDS and like kind of, because it was kind of hush-hush. There were a few big events that happened in China where like a blood bank, they had tainted blood and whole villages got AIDS.
Oh, wow.
And they had kind of kept it hush hush, and this was the first time they'd let anyone talk about it in film or anything. So it was kind of a big deal. We actually brought volunteers who were people who had AIDS to come. They weren't filmmakers. They came and they helped on the set, and they were part of us. And that was actually part of it, and that was part of mine. And then there was actually a famous documentary filmmaker making a documentary just about them and their experience on the set. So actually 2 documentaries being made. It's really interesting. So I have that one too. That one's online. But there were a ton of really big Chinese stars on that one, so that was really neat. I got to interview them all, and I was working with them. Sometimes I was riding in a van with them, a small van, because, like, Jay's got to get out there early to set up for an interview with them or whatever. So it was just a really neat experience. I got to do a lot of really cool stuff that you normally probably wouldn't get to do that early on in your career here in the U.S.
And this opened up because you're fluent. You're a polyglot. You can speak multiple languages.
Yeah.
You got that down. You pursued this a kind of a very unique path. You didn't follow everybody else's, definition of what like life is supposed to kind of look like. You just kind of, it seems like you just found it. You were lucky enough to find like film, and because of your background with your mom and like the arts, you aesthetics and beauty, you can kind of, you knew that you're going to go into that flow space of somehow. Man, damn, you're lucky, man. I was lucky in that I was born into a musical family. My dad was a trumpet player for a long time.
Yeah. So
very similar. I just know that I'm always going to be around the musical world, and when I'm in it, it's wu wei. It's action, non-action. It's just I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not thinking about it, right? I'm not having to. Well, let me plan a future like this. You just go. You just follow what you're called to do.
I think it's admirable, because I feel like the one thing that defines you is you're just fearless. I mean, I think about all the things that could have stopped you because you might have been like afraid, or nervous, or just like, well, I could do that, but I've never been out of Texas, or that's just kind of scary. And, that's so far away. That's so unfamiliar. But you just went for it. And I just think that you're just this testimonial. You're a walking testimonial of all the wonderful things that can happen if you're willing to take a step into the unknown and not be afraid.
I guess I would really say the biggest factor was just naivety.
You didn't know.
It wasn't. I was just passionate about these things. I was passionate about Japan, and I went to Japan. I was passionate about Asia. I just loved lots of things about Asia, and I just want to keep getting over there. So for me, it was an adventure and an opportunity. And I landed in these places to speak a lick of the language, and you pick it up, you make friends, I played soccer. That helped a lot. That was always a great icebreaker to get in with. I mean, really, I'm so glad I picked the sport. I could have played baseball, basketball, whatever, but that sport is so international. Anywhere I've ever gone, I've been able to just jump in to pick up games, meet friends that way. And it's been great. But I think for me, it was, I never thought of it as a challenge, or like, this is what I'm doing is really crazy or tough. And I get that when people hear that, they're like, you went there not speaking a local language. You didn't know a single person. You just hopped over to Taiwan for a summer, and you didn't go through a study abroad program because they wanted $5,000 for a 2-month program. And if you paid for it yourself, it was like $500, and it's like, I just went on their website, and they had a basic English page, and I just wired the money, and I just bought my air ticket. I used the leftover money from my Japan program and teaching English on the side. But it was like, that's what I wanted to do. And there were ways to do it, and I just found those ways. And, I never thought about this might be tough, or this might be crazy. You shouldn't do this, or this could be, it was never dangerous, but people think that or assume that, but for me, it was just this is an adventure. This is the coolest thing ever. And I actually have these means to do it, partially because I kept finding very inexpensive opportunities or scholarships. And then I'd always have enough money left over for those scholarships to go do something else with it. Right. Yeah. It just,
so but education opened that up.
But I think there is, I mean, you may not realize how rare that is, because you are saying, well, I just did this, and it's just, but what we, with our recruitment of students to go on to both to Portugal, and then in the past several years, the things that always fall through, in the experiences that Lindsay and I have had, the things that continually fall through are that students talk themselves out of the experience that they really, really want to do. And part's financial, in all fairness, part is the financial obstacles or they just kind of start worrying about the cost, but they've committed in their brain to the cost from the start. I mean, because nothing's come out of the woodwork that's changed about the cost. So they've reconciled the cost. But what starts to creep in are fears about the unknown, and fears about the things that, like, this is a big deal we're going over, and this isn't even anything like what you did. This is like 10 days.
And
but
fully chaperoned and all that.
Yes, exactly. So it's nothing like what you did. But they start to talk themselves out of the whole experience because they just get nervous about the whole international travel and the whole deal. And we've seen it over and over again. And it may be different with students today than even in the post-COVID environment, with the fears that COVID brought about, and also just the new generation of students we see. But, and I don't know, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I just think you're a rare commodity. And I think that what you did is remarkable.
I agree. I think young men right now, the young boys that I see, not all of them, because some are very brave, but young men are struggling right now. Young guys. So maybe we're past it, maybe.
But you've done this with students, and they're just like, they sign up and they're committed and they go. So you've got the magic touch.
I should have you come and
comment
talk
on this real fast, because it is a really important phenomenon, and I'm by no means an expert on this.
Yeah, nor am I.
I really enjoyed reading The Anxious Generation recently. I thought that was a fantastic book. That was really eye-opening, and it helped me to understand better things I'd been noticing for a long time.
Yeah.
The last two generations are that we've coddled our kids to death. We've become so protective of our children, and we've not let them go do anything, and yet we let them go off to their rooms and get on the internet was so much more dangerous than we had this fear in the 80s and 90s of, like, there's pedophiles out there and there's
I remember.
kidnappers and all that.
I remember.
And yet we were in the safest period of time in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Like the crime had gone down, especially towards children. And yet we just got in this mindset, especially in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, like there were these Western countries where we've been especially bad about it. And it has hindered our children so much because we are so afraid that the smallest thing is going to hurt their feelings. Or they're going to physically get hurt or something else. And we've tried to shelter them from all pain possible, and that actually hurts them. You need to experience bad things. You need to experience that pain to grow as a person. And I think, honestly, when you talk about fear and you talk about these students backing out, I think a lot of that is not the students, and I've seen this, it's their parents.
Oh, good
It's their
point.
parents' fear, and it's their parents saying, I don't know that I'm fully comfortable, or do you really want to go off? Think about all the horrible things that could happen to you.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't have that. My parents were great, partially because they had 4 kids. So if they lost one of them to, whatever, we got 3 more. It's okay.
One down, 3 to go. Let's do this, people.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
But they were right on the cusp of that change in parenting,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Growing up in the 80s, that's really when it started to change. So I grew up with play culture, to reference the Anxious Generation, and not with phone culture, and not with this extreme coddling that came the generation right after mine, that now you're seeing it in its second generation, and it is crippling our kids. And I think so many parents, without realizing, with good intention, there's nothing wrong with wanting to protect your kid, but they're so protective that we're not letting our kids go out there and experience things for fear of them getting hurt or actually crying.
No, you're absolutely right. You called it, because I bet that's when it starts, is when they start looping their parents in on their choice. Because Janice was talking about this, and she was saying that even now parents are deciding to go like on spring break with their kids and saying, where are you going for spring break? And their kids will tell them, and the parents will go, why don't I come along? And I'll get a room right down the hall and just make sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
Especially if they're going to a foreign country, because parents are so nervous about their student going off to a foreign country, period.
Yeah.
So I bet some of the study abroad students, that maybe their parents are like, well, why don't I come along?
Yeah.
And then that leads to, well, just never mind. Well,
Yeah.
we'll just not do
Yeah,
it. But I'm only hypothesizing, and I could be complete. But I think you raised such a valid point. And when I went studying abroad, my parents were just like, let us
Yeah.
know when you get back, send pictures. You know,
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
just like, have a good time.
I'm kind of excited for
Yeah,
you. Like,
absolutely.
He's getting an opportunity that we never had. That's great. We're so happy for you. You know, please
Yeah.
write a few times or set it. Or
Yeah.
when I went to Japan, I set them up with email so that we could actually, I didn't have to write letters and put them in the mail. Right?
Right. Well, I lived away from home when I was a sophomore in high school for an
that's-
entire year.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I did, and it was I was really sick, so I lived in a hospital. But it was still But
Which
it was
even
still
crazier. Some of your stories about like having clowns throwing candy at you from a helicopter.
We're not going there.
Actually,
it was,
no. Let's go there.
It was a research hospital, and they were researching I had really severe asthma, but I know. So asthma is kind of a boring disease normally, but for me, I was in like the top I was a 1%er.
Oh my gosh,
I was in the
wow.
top 1% of severe asthmatics. So I was sent to a research hospital, and with kids from all over the world that were severe. And so a lot of the drugs that are on the market now for asthmatics were tested on us. So
wow.
we were like test subjects. But I had to live in a dorm room, and I was with other kids from all over the world, and I was basically on my own. And we had to have shrinks. We had to have therapists because the research at the time was saying that there was an emotional component to asthma, and a lot of your emotions were contributing to your flare-ups and your attacks. So we had to it was compulsory to see a psychiatrist once a week, and I'd never seen a psychiatrist or anything, but we had to. And my psychiatrist that was assigned to me was Julia Child's niece.
Oh, wow.
And so her name was Philadelphia Cousins, and she was my psychiatrist that I had to see. And she was giant. I mean, she was like 7 feet tall, and very commanding presence. And so I saw her, but this is all beside the point. But I don't. Where was I going with this? So my parents had to ship me off to what was almost like a boarding school.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. I went to school and I was boarded, but it was a research hospital. But it was very similar to that experience. And I lived away from my brother and my family for my entire sophomore year of high school.
Maybe not for the happiest reasons, but it's still an incredible experience.
It was. I actually met very good friends and had a great experience. So it wasn't a horrible thing, to be there. So
I remember us as kids, like our parents would be like, well, dinner's at 6 if you want dinner. And then sometimes I'd miss dinner. I'd be coming home like at 9 at night. It was dark already. We'd been in dirt clog wars all day. I'd ridden my bike across town, to the...
Yeah.
One time I rode my bike to Chapel Hills Mall, which is like way far away from where I used to live.
Yeah.
And then it was like I ended up bumming a ride home, actually by hitchhiking.
from a stranger.
I hitchhiked.
Yeah, but
You did
you
not.
learn so much about the world.
You did not hitchhike.
Yep.
Did you?
Yeah, no,
Seriously?
we did some crazy things.
Yeah.
I would call my parents and be like, I'm going to stay at my friend's house, but then we were out like partying.
Oh
and
yeah,
doing
well
other stuff,
we
and,
all did that,
I
like
mean,
the old switcheroo.
I agree. Kids need to experience that kind of freedom again.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the playground.
Well, now you can be tracked. Your parents know where you are at any minute because they can track your phone.
Or they can just send messages to you.
Yeah.
So that way you have constant communication. And it's interesting too because going back to something that you had pointed out before, it's interesting because you had the opportunity to also go and experience different cuisines because you would go visit with my friend's parents are making food and we're just going to eat here. The reason why I'm skipping a meal at home is because I'm hanging out with my friends and they're eating right now. So I'm hungry right now, so I'm just going to join them.
Yeah.
So I had soul food, I had Korean food, I had Hispanic food for the first time. Those real cuisines and stuff. Yeah. No, I was into Taekwondo and stuff, and we would go to the...
That's
my
right.
God!
You had your little robe in your closet.
Yeah, no,
when I was dating you, I'm like, what's this?
Yeah, I was a... I
Did he show you any of his moves? Was that part of the
We did the forms. Yeah, I forgot
he
my
didn't
forms.
Show me your moves.
Oh, there's forms. Yeah, you have to do
I never have seen you do
like
any
Tai Chi
of those.
Forms. Oh yeah, no, I forgot most of them, but no, it's just so fascinating. The East has such great history and wisdom that if we're listening, you can really, you can live an incredibly successful life by following some of these principles that come out of China, out of the East, just out of that tradition. I know it wasn't even called China back then. That's the Qi clan, right? That finally won QI eventually, because China was such a fractured place for so many centuries, right? Like most places. I just do wonder if AI is going to eventually be the I that humanity needs, to kind of to cross those bridges and to become kind of like a society that's going into space, which is another Prime Directive, but not for Star Trek reasons. So
That's great. But I do want to hear about your trip with the students. Tell us about what you did with the students, because I just think that's wonderful too. So
there's this group in China. I don't know exactly how they get their funding, but they basically they started in 2011, and every summer they bring, actually they start in like April. It runs from like April to July, but they bring in groups of students. They put them in groups of 10. They partner, the organization is based at Beijing Normal University, which is actually less than a mile from where I lived for 7 years in Beijing. So it's like my part of town that I know really well. So this is all fate, right? The Chinese have this concept of fate called yuanfen. So I always feel like I have yuanfen with this university because I live right up the road and I knew that whole area. But they bring in about 100 students, international students from all over the world, but mostly Western countries, to make a 10-minute documentary in Chinese. And these are all people, almost all of them, it's their first time to China, never been to China before. So they pair them up with a local student, not always a filmmaker, but someone tangentially related to filmmaking or something like that. Some of them broadcast, things like that. And each group, the Chinese partner is like their translator, their producer, but all the creative decisions are made by the foreign student. They want foreign students to basically come in and see China for the first time. And, we give them different topics they choose, but make a documentary about this topic through their eyes as a foreigner, seeing China with fresh eyes. And it's a really great idea. And so each group of 10 goes to a different partner university in different parts of China. So when I was at the university when I was working at the University of Hawaii's film school, I supervised a group in 2017 and got to meet the organization. And the supervisors are drawn from the schools that are sending students, and they rotate them every year. But rarely do they get, someone who actually has lived in China, has China experience, speaks Chinese, worked in the film industry there, knows the places to rent equipment around their university better than them. So, and I was supervising the Beijing group that year. And so hit it off with them really well, kept in touch with them over the years. And then when I moved to Austin, started teaching there, I said, hey, I'm at a different school, but I'd love to bring students. They said, sure, but that was late 2019. And of course, the next summer, then the next 3 summers, China was closed down. So they did the program, but only with foreigners who were already in China, not necessarily filmmakers. But anyway, as China was opening back up, I was here at UCCS. I reached out again. I said, hey, I'm at a different school again. I'd really love to bring some students. I know we're not part of this film school consortium that you normally partner with, but would you let me bring some students? And also, I'd be happy to supervise again. So last year, 2 years ago, they said yes. So last summer, originally it was going to be 2 students. And then the day after I put out the call for applications at UCCS for 2 of our students to join, they reached out and said, hey, can you bring 5 students, by the way? So I guess another school that they were just opening it back up from after COVID and trying to reconnect with all these schools they'd worked with. I guess one of the schools dropped out last minute. So I got to take 5 students. The really cool thing about this is they have the funding to pay for everything. So just like my Japan trip, it's not a year long, granted, it's about 3 weeks, but it's all paid for except for like getting your China visa and a passport if you don't have one. And
is that complex? Is it fairly complex to get a passport into China?
Well, passport you get here, but the visa.
The visa, I'm sorry, the visa.
No, it's just the complex thing about it is unlike some embassies and consulates, they won't let you mail in your passport. So if you're not in a city with one or don't have one nearby, like we don't have a Chinese consulate in Denver, you have to go through a travel agency and they're the ones who charge you an arm and a leg. Also, Americans get charged more than any other country for a China visa. It's like $140 because we charge, they're matching our prices basically. And we make it hard for Chinese, really a lot of people to get in the country and stay in the country. But anyway, different topic. Yeah. But yeah, we go through a travel agency and you have to go to a specific consulate for the region you're in. So Colorado, last year we were actually at the Chicago consulate. They just redrew their maps, so now we have to go through LA. So we just go through a travel agency and they charge several $100s basically to mail it off for you.
Man.
Have someone there in LA who can take it in and drop it off, because you don't have to drop it off in person. Someone has to drop it off though. You can't just mail it directly to them.
Interesting. So that gets a little pricey because per person, $700.
It's a few $100.
Yeah, that's.
So it's over double what the consulate's charging. Anyway, so we go and we have 3 days. We kind of acclimate and all that. By the fourth day, they start shooting their documentary, and all the topics are like each year the host university, they find the topics, like 15 topics or so for 10 students, and the students choose their top 3 choices, and then I try to balance it so everyone gets one of their top 3 choices. So they already know their topic going in. They don't necessarily, and they can do a little pre-production work with their Chinese partner ahead of time. But basically, once they're on the ground, they jump in with very little stuff done, and they get 5 days to go film their topic, and then turn around right after that, no break, 6 days in an editing room, like editing. And a lot of these students have never made a documentary before. A lot of them are studying narrative film and all that. So it's intense, really intense. And then they finish that. We have a final screening. We go karaoke and party, have fun for a day or whatever.
Nice.
Our group last year, we were in Xiamen and Fujian last year. So like Fujian's just north of Hong Kong and Guangzhou. So a lot of Fujian's where a lot of our Chinese immigrants here in the U.S. come from. So that was really neat. Xiamen is like this beautiful city right on the coast. But topics were all around Fujian really. This year, like I mentioned, we're going, and Fujian's on the coast, the east coast, where the densest population is in China. We're going to a very dense, sparsely populated region of China called Xinjiang. It's north of Tibet, but it's massive. It's 2.5 times the size of Texas. That's what I have to rate everything on. So like 3 times the size of France, like massive.
Yeah.
And it's got maybe 20 million people, whereas you have provinces of China that are much, much smaller and have 100 million people. I mean, so it's really spread out. There's a lot of oil there. The main thing is it's an ethnic corridor. And so you have all these different ethnicities who've been there for ages. Like my wife's Mongolian. Half the places in northern Xinjiang, place names are actually from Mongolian names, although used to be a lot more Mongolians there, I'm sure. Nowadays, they're about 1% of the population. The largest groups are actually Muslim groups. So you have the Uyghurs, or the largest group that you probably hear about in the news a lot.
Yeah.
Kazakhs, the Hui Chinese, who were mixed with Arab traders who came to China, centuries and centuries ago, and intermarried with Chinese. So Hui mostly, and most of that Arab blood's kind of filtered out over the years, so they look Chinese, but they're Muslim. So a very interesting group, and quite a few of them. So there's a lot of those groups there.
So when you say China, it's most Americans aren't aware of this, right?
Yeah.
That it's
No.
It is not one monolithic society.
They're not as homogenous as, say, the Japanese, for example.
Japanese and Koreans are much more homogenous, yes. Having said that, like Han Chinese make up like 92 to 94% of China's population, so the minority groups are smaller, but there's some very large groups. Amongst, 6 to 8% of 1.4 billion people is still much larger than most countries, right? Like that, or a lot of countries. It's a lot of people. The other thing you have to understand is, like, when we say Han Chinese, it's all about how you classify ethnic groups, but really the Han Chinese was a construct to unify China, right? And you actually have groups that Northern Chinese and Southern Chinese, different areas, they look nothing like. Their customs are not like. Their language is not the same. Their economic means are not the same. There's rice farmers in the south, and like they have ancestral halls and all that you just don't see in the north. So when we were in Fujian in the south last year, it was a very different experience than what I was used to all those years I lived in Beijing. Very different. Everything looks different. So it's almost like you're in a different country, but they've unified them over the years. Everyone speaks Mandarin now, but they also have their own local dialect. So really what makes up this homogenous Han Chinese group is not homogenous at all. And communist China went off Stalin's classification factors, 4 factors about how you classify different ethnic groups. And really, if you went by those and you really went and dug down deep, the Han China, there's so many different groups amongst the Han Chinese that would actually be separate groups.
Yeah.
So it is not at all a homogenous country, and it's massive compared to Japan and Korea as well.
Yeah.
And Japan being an island country, like, an archipelago, it was isolated anyway, so it was easier for them to harder for people, harder for them to mix. And then in modern times, they've been very closed off in terms of immigration and all that. Right. Not that China's a lot, but China historically just, China's borders changed so much over the years too. Japan's borders never changed, right?
Right.
China's borders, why are there so many more Mongolians? There's more, just a reference, my wife's Mongolian, so I know a bit more about the Mongolian ethnic group there. There's over twice as many Mongolians in China as there are in Mongolia. Not because they immigrated, but because those borders were drawn long after those people had settled in those areas, right? So they have a province called Inner Mongolia that's just south of Mongolia, the country. And since it's further south, Mongolia is a very cold place. The Mongolian steppes are a very cold, inhospitable place. Yeah, so naturally, more of them wanted to be further south. Yeah. And then much later, borders got drawn, and okay, you're in China, right? So you're part of this other group, but ethnically, they're still Mongolia, right?
And it's massive land size. Asia is just enormous, right? It's twice the size of the United States. I mean, it's huge. It's enormous.
Asia, China's almost the same size as the U.S. actually,
right?
Because
China,
we have Alaska,
just to China,
right?
There, right?
But Mongolia, Kazakhstan, right next to them, Russia.
Yeah.
Like
You
add those on, and you're. I mean, look at this number too. Like over half the world's population is in one continent, Asia.
Yeah.
When they say this is the Asian century, like it's over half our world, and they are driving innovation.
Yeah. No, we're going to have to be partners in some way, shape, or form going into the future. Americans I think younger Americans intuitively kind of understand this. I wonder if sometimes if it's the older Americans that you were talking about, those generational split constructs that people still hold on to, that are still don't allow you to kind of let go sometimes of the. Maybe prejudice is the wrong word. Just those preconceived ideas that you have about a group or a country that you've never been in, you've never really interacted with, yet everything that you're wearing, buying, using, in other words, has been touched or manufactured or designed.
I know.
Or I think about. Can you think of one thing?
Well, when you were mentioning the Uyghurs and the things that we hear about that, my thoughts were going to obviously just the economy and just the way that we are so intertwined with China and everything, and then the things going on with tariffs and all of the trade wars
that was going on with tariffs.
I know.
Now is not going on.
I know. I hear we're in new territory now. We've got like a ceasefire on the trade war.
Yeah.
But I just wonder too, what the long-term ramifications of all that are when you do travel. Do you see that are people in any way have had different views on the U.S. because I know someone was saying they just were in Canada, and I can't remember who it was, and when they were talking to Canadians, they just said, "What's going on with the U.S.?"
They're pissed off at us.
Yeah, just trying to get a feel for what the average American thinks about everything going on, because they just are trying to understand. And I just wonder if you've sensed any of the same things with the Chinese, that just asking for any ideas about what the average American perspective might be on these new policies.
I can't speak to I follow some of it, and Nara, my wife, follows that more. She reads a lot of Chinese media and all that. I can speak more broadly to just Chinese views on America, and it's very much, I feel like, a love-hate relationship, right?
Right. Understandably.
You have this big political and economic rival, basically, and we feel the rivalry as much, if not more, than China has, and this cultural hegemony, things like that we exert a lot of push in the world, and there's pushback to that, understandably, all over the world, but China especially, and at the same time, for the last 30, 40 years since China's really opened up, that's been the number one destination for immigration. It's like they look up to the U.S. They want to go to the U.S. They feel like there's more opportunities there. They like a lot of things tend to like a lot of things about our culture. They watch our movies, but at the same time, when politics come into the equation, sure, they're going to get pissed off, understandably, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that makes them most upset is feeling disrespected by Western media.
Yeah.
And again, understandably, we don't always paint a full picture. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not going to say that China's perfect and they're doing everything right. No, we're rivals, right? And they do things differently than we do, and we can call that underhanded. They can call what we're doing underhanded. And it's just people talking over each other usually is the problem. But that's why I feel like it's so important to have these. That's why I love Looking China, this program, We need more cultural exchange. We need more people.
Yeah.
China has tons of people coming over here. I can't stress this enough. I've been to the boonies. I've been to like Bumblefuck, the middle of nowhere, China, and talk to farmers, and they know that some major company just merged with another one in Germany or the US or whatever. They're knowledgeable about the world.
Yeah.
They know about all these things. They could name 20 major US cities, and these are farmers. These are like people in the boonies. These are people you expect to like have no concept of the outside world. And then you go into major cities and talk to well-educated Americans. They couldn't name 2 Chinese cities, or you could say the name of a Chinese city that has 12 million people, and they'd be like, "What? Chengdu? What's that?"
Yeah.
Right? Where's that? You know, like, so China and Chinese, I mean, they've got a leg up on us. They are very much, everyone's got the concept, they're a communist country, their information's controlled, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, the internet exists now, and aside from maybe North Korea, everyone's got free access to it. Even if there's the Great Firewall of China, like, they're getting their information, they're sharing that information. They know about the world, they're thinking about the world, they're thinking internationally, and we're just here sitting comfortably because we've been number one for so long. We're not learning anything about the world. We're sheltering our kids and saying, stay home, don't go hurt yourself. And the Chinese are saying, get your ass up and go find opportunities abroad and like make a living and make a life for yourself, right? And it's
this is how
it's coming home to roost.
Well, this is how civilization.
We need to open up, but we need more exchange. We need to see what we don't. All we're seeing, if anything at all, if we're even reading the newspaper, is mostly negative, one-dimensional, two-dimensional things about China, and we need the full picture. And the more of us have the full picture, the better we're going to be. The more people we're going to have in positions of power in the next few generations who are willing to work together as much as possible. We're 2 different countries with 2 very different objectives. That's fine. Their prime objective is different than our prime objective. But the more people recognize that and understand their prime objectives to start with before they go into negotiations, the better. 1.4 billion people over there and 300 million people over here, and really everyone else who's actually directly and indirectly affected by that, which is 99.9% of the world, is going to be better off.
I once heard, maybe it was, which economist was it? They were like, if you're 1 in a million, there's 1,000 people just like you in China. If you're 1 in a million. And so, you want to...
1,400 now.
1,400, that's right. There's 1,400 people just like you. And so we want to be mindful, I guess, of the idea that as a Prime Directive, one of the ideas could be to be literate in a multicultural viewpoint of the world, not be ethnocentric, to be able to appreciate the history and traditions that unique civilizations have and have carried on and through. When you were talking about the Han Dynasty, I couldn't help but think of like the Song Dynasty as well, because I taught that when I was doing social studies about the history of ancient China and the first Dragon Emperor and Zhuangzi and all that stuff. And I was just like, it makes me thankful, I guess, that I was born here, just because it's like winning the lottery. When you're an American, you're already 4% of the world's population.
But you have so many access to so many more opportunities and resources than
we have
95% of the world.
People just don't understand that. Even the poorest of us in America, and I did consider myself poor, growing up as a kid. But even as a poor kid in America, my life compared to, say, someone is suffering in a province, on the borders of India and Mongolia and China. My God, we watched a documentary called the priest with the
Tashi and the monk.
Tashi and the monk. And just this guy's Buddhist calling to try to save children. This is a guy who was born in a toilet, literally born in a toilet, and has, through his spiritual journey with Buddhists, formed this
what
school.
would be considered when he was, in a village. In a village,
but what he's been able to accomplish in a life to help out these children who are...
He ended up with the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, he ended up studying with the Dalai Lama for a while before he went out on his own calling.
So as we close the chapter, Lend us your ear. The Prime Directive's calling, so let's pass a beer. The Prime Directive, where the laughter's alive. Society's reflections, let's help each other thrive. Politics and culture, oh, oh.